Alright lads, welcome to Untold. We're back in Rogers again today. Today we have the lovely Jerry Cronin with us. Let us know how you felt about the interview. If you've any positive re-encouragement or things that you think we could do differently, don't be afraid to let us know down below. Enjoy lads.
Hi guys, I just wanted to pop in quickly post-edit and just say this is actually the third interview we ever recorded for Untold. So I'm very inexperienced in it. I say and but and a lot. So just disclaimer on that. Everything Jerry says, the reason we've kept it this long to post the interview is because this interview with Jerry is genuinely, I believe, hand on my heart, one of our best. I hope you enjoyed the interview, guys. We had a blast recording it, Enjoy, guys. I won't keep you. Bye.
How are you doing today, Jerry?
I'm well.
Could you say your name for the camera and when and where you were born?
The name is Jerry Cronin. I was born in 1958 in a hospital in Cork, but my home at that time was in a place called Dirrenlunnig, in quite close to Wonderful.
And what was it like growing up there?
I didn't grow up there. I left there when I was 3 and came to Kilgarvan.
Alright.
My parents, well, we were living in a fairly isolated place up in Dirrenlunnig. Nearest school would have been 3 miles or so across the bog. My older brother and sister were well ready for school, but there were no other children around us, and my mother had 2 more children. My father was out working, so it wasn't possible for mother or father to walk the children to school or drive them to school. So we moved to Kilgarvan, and my parents bought a premises right beside what was in the school here in Kilgarvan.
And what was it like moving to Kilgarvan then? Did you find
I actually remember it. I was 3 years old. I remember the day we moved. Yeah. I suppose I was excited. I don't know. I was 3 years old. My memories are vague. Yeah.
Would you have any funny stories or memories about growing up in the village?
Oh, there are quite a lot. Yeah. Look, it was a lovely place to grow up.
Yeah.
Absolutely lovely place to grow up, And the village was full of young families at the time. I mean, this house next door, down you had Toomeys, you had Hickeys, you had Kelleher's, you had Healy's, Riley's, Healy's on the Bog Road, Harney's, Shines, Sullivan's. Basically, if you were bored as a child in this village, we never were because we had plenty to do, but if you hopped the ball in the village, you could be guaranteed there'd be at least 10 children on to you within seconds.
I'd say you got up to plenty mischief, so...
We did, the river was running below the village, so we spent a lot of our Sunday afternoons down there. There would actually, and there's nobody going swimming in Daly's pool now. Daly's pool's pool down just below the village, and there's a little island on it. And I remember a time there'd be 30, 40 youngsters down there swimming together. Yeah. Easily 30 or 40. Being young adults and children and older adults too, maybe. Yeah, we would go down, especially on Sunday evenings, there would be a big crowd there, but any evening in the summertime, if we went down to Daly's pool, we'd be sure that it was safe. There was always a few good, strong swimmers down there, and yeah, we had a good time.
Mm-hmm. And what was it like going to school then in the 60s?
School was, I suppose, different to what school is today. School for us was here where the community centre is now. When I started school, there were 3 classrooms, 3 teachers. John David O'Brien, God rest him. Dermot Hickey was the principal, and Maureen Hickey, his wife, was teaching games for his classes. So I started at about 4 years of age in Mrs. Hickey's room and went to first class up to John David O'Brien, and 4th, 5th and 6th class was with Dermot Hickey. It was good. I'd imagine there were about 100 children in the school at the time. It was good. We got a good, very broad education. Prepared for a lot of... we were given a lot of life skills. Yeah, we were. We would often be out of school for lots of reasons. It might be walking cattle to the fair for anybody in the village, not just our own, to Kinmare. That would mean being up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and if we were walking cattle in for Dermot Hickey, who was our principal, we would be leaving. If you know where Eleanor Hickey lives now, married to Christopher Dunn, there's the entrance there was a black gate there coming out of the church ground. We could be leaving there with 30 bullocks, maybe 5 or 6 youngsters from primary school. and walk those steers into Kinmere Fair. And he would then bring us out, drive us out. We'd do about 2 hours, 3 hours to walk them in. We'd be in for about 7 o'clock. And Mr. Hickey, as we called him, or Master Hickey, would bring us out and we'd be ready to go in time for school. And if the cattle weren't sold, we would be driven in again and to walk them out again. So that would be 14, 15 miles walking, which with cattle, and the work of a drover is a tough one. You have to be behind them and in front of them, and if they go off course, you have to round them up again. So yeah, we had quite an active enough childhood there.
And you hear an awful lot about people who went to school in the 60s, 70s, 80s, that a lot of them wouldn't have finished school, and then maybe some of them would have been missing for half the year to help on the farm or something like that. Did you finish out school yourself, or?
I did, yeah. People did take time off for school. If the bog was a big draw, and it was accepted that children would be kept at home for the day in the bog. Saving hay, especially if the weather was threatening and hay needed to be cut and saved, before the weather broke. Children would be kept home from school, yeah. Stations, house stations, that was a time when everybody in a few town lands got together and priests came and had confessions and said mass, and there was a big party all day, and all the children of the station area would be away from school for the station. Lots of reasons, yeah. I suppose the common answer when teacher asked where were you yesterday, a fairly usual answer would be I was wanted at home, sir. And that would be the case, yeah. Children would have been wanted at home to get jobs and get work done.
And you mentioned stations there as well. Could you tell us a small bit more about them?
Yeah, they were a big part of the social life and the worshipping community life right up until very recent, up until the 80s. The parish would have been, I suppose, divided into station districts. So we said this house, Rogers Bar, would have been Village North. And Village North would have been all the houses from the Bog Road, from Purcell's to, I would imagine, to right here. East of here was Church Ground. And Village South would be from, I think, roughly maybe Coffees down the other side of the village, right down to the top of the cross. That would have been Village South. Courtnabowl and Sunville would have been another station district. There would probably be 15, 20 houses in every station district. And there were two stations. You had the spring station and the autumn station. And basically it was how the priest collected his revenue. So the priest would come to every house in the station district in turn would host the station. The priest would come in the morning, he would hear confessions, he would celebrate mass, then he would collect his station dues. So people would give him, it was a set figure, it was quite affordable for people, just it was for the support of the priest, it was his wages really. And the traditional breakfast, I called it breakfast, I don't know why, the traditional breakfast at the station would have been turkey, ham, stuffing, potato salad, coleslaw maybe, lettuce, and there would always be fruit cake, sherry trifle for dessert, and there would be plates of fruit cake and biscuits and lots of sweets and stuff. Yeah, children love the stations, but it was a big day, and there was a big party in the house. In the night, the parties often went on to 3, 4 in the morning. They would have started as a very spiritual event, and they would have ended with a holy. But it basically did a lot. It brought the local neighbours together in a social setting, but it also was spiritually enriching for them, and it also gave people a reason to get the house in order, get any repairs done to the house that needed to be done, get the painting done, the whitewashing done, and yeah, it served a lot of purposes. the stations were a good practice.
And would you have any funny stories of anything that went on at the stations, or was it all very cut and dry? Priest comes in, says mass.
There would have been lots of that. I mean, there would have been a lot of drink involved. There's no doubt about that in a lot of cases. Yeah, but I mean, it was basically about people were very, very talented, and this Kilgarvan is rich in talent, really rich in talent, and you've seen it here on Thursday nights. You know, the amount of talent, local talent we have coming in, singing, playing music, all that kind of thing, and that would have been even more, I'll say, condensed geographically. In that it would be the very next door neighbours that that would be, and neighbours 3 or 4 doors away or 3 or 4 yards away in the countryside from the same townland. They would all come together. They would all be playing music and singing, and it wasn't about the skill or the quality or the richness. It was just the fact that everybody did play music and everybody did sing songs and everybody did play. I suppose there were lots of stories. A lot of the people I remember now are dead and gone, and it might be best still to honour their memory with silence. But yeah, I mean, where there's a lot of people at the time didn't normally drink a lot, so the station would have been one of the few occasions in the year where they did have a lot to drink. So yeah, there would have been, I suppose, stories to tell, but they were never made public, and people protected each other's privacy and dignity and that kind of thing, and I think it might be best to leave that as it is.
Speaking of parties as well, could you tell us anything about the ballrooms where you?
Oh yeah, the ballrooms were a big entertainment tradition. The nearest one here was Hickey's over the road, where there's a joinery on there at the moment. They make windows and that kind of stuff. You know where it is. It's right across from the housing estate. You know the big building on the left beside the graveyard, beside the cemetery. Yeah.
What's that housing estate called?
It should be in the tip of my tongue. The St. Garvin's is on the left.
Yeah.
And the one across the road is Amelia Muse.
That's the one.
Amelia Muse, not a very traditionally Irish name by any standards. I'm sure it's a mix of shortened names of the family that built it. But Hickey's Hall was across from there, and there would be a dance there every Sunday night. Inchees Hall, do you know Inchees Bridge? There was a hall there, and there would have been dances there. Kenmare, you had the Carnegie. We also had the Gala Ballroom, which was down at the square. It's the Butter Market, I think they call it now.
Yeah.
The Lake House, which was back in Two Sis. You had the ballroom in Sneem. So there were ballrooms everywhere. I suppose in the Gleneagle, the town hall and the Gleneagle were big spots. In Kenmare, you would have, every Thursday night you would have a big band. I'm talking about the likes of, at the time, Gina Dale Hayes and the Champions, the Indians, Brendan Shine. Yeah, there would have been there would have been quite a lot of the bigger bands, and on Sunday nights you had the smaller groups, but there would always have been loads of dancing. The dancing would finish at 1 o'clock. The bars would have been closed at 11. There wouldn't have been a lot of drinking. There was a mineral bar upstairs, and that's where a lot of romances began. We would, I suppose, when I started to move out in my mid-late teens, we would have travelled to Mallow, Newcastle West, Castle Island, Abbeyfield, Inniskeen, Ballineen, Bantry. I suppose distance wasn't an issue, it wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
But the ballroom scene it was good, it was what people looked forward to. Again, up to the 80s really, I suppose. Ballrooms started to lose their popularity when the discos and the nightclubs began to grow. And there was a big nightclub in Riversdale And I suppose that probably brought an end to the ballrooms around here. Inches had been closed due to a very tragic accident in the 60s. And the Gala Ballroom closed sometime in the 70s. But the Riversdale nightclub was thriving at that stage, and people were coming from all over. There were buses running from Ballincollig, Mallow, Mitchelstown, all over. Castletown Bear, Bantry, busing people into Riversdale, and that was, it was good. It was good, yeah.
And what was that like then? Riversdale?
It was very popular.
Yeah.
It was where people met. Disco, good DJs, good music, bars open late. Could be fairly crowded and busy at times, but for the most part it was very, very enjoyable.
And just to kind of change the direction we're going in a bit, what was your first job and what was that like working?
I had a lot of jobs, I suppose. My mother ran a guest house. So from a very young age, I would have been, and all my siblings, we would have been very, very busy. I'm talking about, she would have had maybe 9 bedrooms, could have up to 18 people staying overnight. She would have been doing 30, 40 lunches every day and 15, 20 evening meals. But we would serve breakfast before going to school in the morning at the 11 o'clock. Play break, we'd run down home, just over the wall, finish doing any wash up that had to be done, set up the tables for lunch. At the lunch break, run down home, serve the lunch, back to school. At the 2 o'clock break, we'd be down again, maybe to start the wash up, and after school in the evening, home, get washed up, get set up for the evening meal, and start prepping stuff for the next day, veg, whatever, potatoes, veg was mainly the job. We would have been killing pigs at home, killing sheep at home, and I was 11 years of age. It was the year before I went to secondary school. I worked for Tommy Randall's, we called him Tommy Pat Tom. He'd be the father of, what's her name? She comes in here quite regularly. They live in Cork. Trace. She's married to a Cork man. Do you know Trace?
Yeah.
Yeah, her father. He had a butcher shop in Kilmare. Randall's butchers are still in Main Street, but at the time, the shop was down at McSweeney's corner, where McSweeney's electrical shop is. And it was the year before I went into first year in secondary school anyway. I would hitch into Kilmare every morning to be in for 9 o'clock. It was easy enough. Denny Sullivan, we call him Denny Cohn, or Dennis Lynch, or there was always, so Willie Sweeney would be going in, Mary Sweeney, they'd always get a lift in. I would work in the shop all day. The shop would close in the evenings, 6 o'clock, and out to the slaughterhouse and spend a few more hours in the slaughterhouse and then hitch home. And that was 6 days a week. We were open Saturdays as well. So at 11 years of age, I could be seen serving in the shop, or skinning sheep, or cutting down sheep, or cleaning out pigs, or shaving pigs, or whatever, and preparing meat for the shop. That was my first job. The next year, when I finished first year in secondary school, I worked with Denny Harrington's father. He was a building contractor, but he also did quite a lot for their Aircom now. At the time they were known as P&T, Ports and Telegraphs. We stood an awful lot of poles, telegraph poles along the road, and we put down quite a lot of cable underground. I worked with them for 5 years, right through secondary school. That was heavy work, It was not unusual to put a small telegraph pole, what we call a subscriber pole, an 18-foot pole, on one shoulder and a pick and shovel on the other shoulder, and go across a field or maybe a couple of fields and dig a hole on your own and stand the pole. And it was hard, heavy work. We loved it. We had great fun. I worked with Denny Harrington, Timmy Hyde, Lord Mercy and Timmy Hyde, a few of those guys, and we could crack. Yeah. After that, I went to work in a feed mill in Ballyvourney, and after that, I set up my own company and ran it for quite a while. Worked in bunkers in Killorglin in the bar for a while. That was my sister was involved, and her husband were running that. Set up my own catering company and worked in that. Then went volunteering in Romania. After the revolution in Romania, there was quite a lot. The news will show us quite a lot of what was happening in Romania. A lot of homeless children living wild in the street. A lot of children leaving the orphanages. The orphanages couldn't contain them. At the time, there was a lady that I had great admiration for. She was Mama Tina, was the name she was known popularly as. She was Christina Noble, and she was looking after homeless children in Vietnam. And I would have loved to have gone to Vietnam to volunteer with her, but too far away and work to be done at home, sheep to be looked after and that kind of stuff. So I went off to Romania after the revolution and spent quite a few years there volunteering. The role was known as self-sufficient volunteer. You had to go and you had to be able to fund yourself, your own accommodation, transport and that kind of stuff. Worked as a volunteer with homeless children in Bucharest for several years, and then I went up to Transylvania, up to Dracula country, and worked with destitute families up there for a few years. And came home and went to seminary for a while. That didn't work out. Studied psychotherapy. Did my psychotherapy degree in about 2010 or thereabouts. And I've been working mental health ever since. So
That's actually, I'm kind of blown away. Like, that was incredibly fascinating. What was it like going out to Romania then?
I definitely enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely enjoyed it, yeah. Quite a lot of there were quite a lot of Irish volunteers in Bucharest at the time. Some of them were young people just going to spend the summer. More were retired. A lot of them were nuns, religious brothers and nuns who had retired from teaching, nursing, that kind of stuff, and they were volunteering out there as well. We were volunteering with a small charity that was based in Wexford called Heart to Hand. Look, we were together, group of Irish people together. You're going to have fun wherever you are.
Be great crack,
And it was great crack, yeah, it was. I mean, we would finish our work on Saturday evening early. There was a French Jesuit. He was chaplain to the French embassy in Bucharest. And he volunteered to say a mass in English. Now, he thought he could speak English. I suppose he could speak it reasonably well.
Yeah.
And his generosity was good, and he offered to say an English mass in the chapel in the French embassy for the Irish people and the Nigerians. So we would meet with the Nigerians every Saturday evening at about 4 o'clock. And we became very friendly with the Nigerian diplomats there, and they would invite us to all their parties, and they would have parties at the drop of a hat, Somebody's birthday, somebody's name day, or somebody's grandmother's birthday, or something like that, They would have parties every second week or so. We would be invited. The food was just absolutely smashing. We became very friendly with the Nigerians through that, but in all, mass would be over by about 4:30 or 5, and we'd head for the Irish pub, and we'd have a good evening. In Bucharest, and we'll be back to work Monday morning again, head down and out, walking the streets and the underground, the sewer canals and the underground railway stations, picking up sick children who had running. I suppose we brought in children into the clinic there had to be a reason to bring them in, but even a slight rise in temperature, a cut that might be in danger of festering, lice, scabies, they were all common. We brought them into the clinic, we dealt with them, we washed their clothes, we fed them and left them off out the streets again. That's what we did. But I suppose I did, Abby, my sister, and I went to Africa for a little while as well, a very short run to Africa. It was in 1993. Father Con Cronin, he was a Kiltegan priest, far out relation, same name, Cronin. He was from Barlin, a big, strong man, and he lived and worked in a little settlement that was way inside bush in western Nigeria. We spent some time there. We had a great time. We really had. We did our bits there, but we really had a lovely time. It was enjoyable. Yeah.
And you mentioned your inspiration for doing all the charity work would be Christina Noble. Would there be anything else that kind of drove you towards kind of getting into missionary work? And
Well, there was, I suppose, a lot of change in my life at the time. There was a breakup of a relationship, and there was a few other things that changed my outlook to life. And I realised big business was no longer for me.
Yeah.
It was big business, and I was doing very well. But I wanted to give, and it is complicated enough, and some of it deeply personal. But I did want to give back some of what I had received and some of the good fortune I'd had in life. And I suppose I wanted an escape from some of the disappointments I had in life. And I felt, to get away from it all, a change in life, and that's the direction I went.
you should be incredibly proud of all of it anyway.
Well, I suppose everything we do it for, we have our selfish reasons for it, that everybody has, for whatever we do, and I suppose we try to purify it as we go along, but I suppose you have people on the ground doing humanitarian work, but that couldn't happen unless there were people at home earning money and funding the clinics and funding the wages for the staff we employed over there and that kind of stuff. So it takes a whole nation to do that kind of work.
Yeah. And just switching it now. How do you believe that, say, the generation of Irish people you grew up in, do you believe that shaped you as the person you are? Like, let's say, for example, the people you were surrounded with.
There's absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, and that is true of everybody.
Yep.
We're always shaped by the environment we grew up in. I suppose we grew up in and I mentioned it was a lovely village to grow up in, and it really was, because living in the village, there must have been 10 mothers in the village at the time, all with children my age. So if my mother wanted to know where we were, all she had to do was stand out in the village, and Rose Toomey would be at the door, and Rose would say, they're up Rogers Field, they're playing up there. My mother might tell Nora Finnegan down the street, they're going down to the river, but they're fine because X and Y, Denny Cove was with them, or something like that, So I often had my supper in Hickey's, and Finan Hickey might be up at my place eating my supper. We did grow up as a village, and it was a lovely experience. I suppose we grew up in a very social environment, in that, we just rambled into each other's houses, did our homework together. I remember Lord Mercy Small Dennis. Do you know Small? Do you know him? Dennis Healy. He'd be Tim John's brother.
Yeah.
He would be up to me to do the homework, and we'd do it together, or I'd go down to him, or I suppose we grew up as a community of children, and it did shape us, it made us social. We didn't have a whole pile growing up, we learned to work hard. We really did work hard as children, all of us. My uncle had a shop just down the road where Dermot Toomey's living now, Dermot Toomey's father. And Dermot and his brother Micheál and sister Sheila, who has since passed as well, they worked hard in the shop. We worked hard down at our place. There were children farms all over the parish, and they were working hard, They were cutting. They may not have been cutting turf, but they would have been saving turf and footing turf and milking cows and shearing sheep, and they would have been working hard, so that did shape me, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I suppose I remember Michael Dial and his family. Did you know Michael Dial? No, he passed away a few years ago.
I think I've met him a few times. Yeah.
They lived up in Dunculling. James E. Gallivan lived up in Kilbanow, 3 miles away. And they walked to school, to the village, to school every day, and walked home again. 2 or 3 miles of a walk. If they forgot their lunch, they went without. You know, I hear stories today of children forgetting their lunch and Mammy would bring it to the school to them.
Yeah.
Forgot his coat and Mammy would bring it to the school to him, you know. I was going, that didn't happen. You forgot, you remembered your coat, or you got wet going home, you know. There was nobody going to bring it. Yeah, I suppose we were lucky enough. My father had a car. Hickey's had a car. Riley's had a car. There were only a few houses in the village had a car at the time. Yeah. Most people didn't have any mode of transport other than bicycles and maybe horse and car, maybe horse and trap.
And compared to the Kilgarvan you grew up in, how would you say it's changed over time? Or would you, and would you say it's changed for the better or the worse?
I suppose change is change, and it's hard to say it's better or worse. But look, the village I grew up in was lively. It was vibrant. Every house in the village had family, young children. There were 6 pubs in the village when I grew up, and they were all thriving. They were all doing well. Shops, I think, I think there were up to 30 shops at Kilgarvan one time. What have you know? You
30.
Yep. And I could start listing them, but I mean, if you were to come down from the top of Coombe, I could count 1, 2, 3 shops between there and Morley's Bridge, and I could count between Morley's Bridge and the graveyard, the cemetery, could count at least 2 more shops. There was a shop at Magerton Cross. There were 2 of them across from the church. Chines at the top of the cross was a shop. Denny Sullivan Combs' parents had a butcher shop. There was a cobbler across just down from there, a shoemaker. Richie Purcell was a tailor. The bakers were down where Ray's Bar is now. That was a hotel. You had the Red Restaurant. You had the White Heather, which was May Cronin's shop and restaurant. Randall's. From here to the corner below, just where the traffic lights are, there were 1, 2, 4 shops on the right hand side, and Lindsay Hakers across on the left. So just in that little bit of street alone, you had 5 shops.
There used to be huge business in the village, so.
Well, people didn't have the means to travel, and there were none of these great supermarkets that you have now.
Yeah.
So people did all their shopping locally. And remember, okay, if you wanted a suit when I was a child, but the day of the ready-made suit came very quickly when I was young. I don't think I ever wore a tailored suit or anything tailored. But if you wanted a suit for a specific reason, you went to Joe Mabry's shop, which was, if you go down the village, it was the big window staring you right in the face there. You went into Joe Mabry and you bought the material. You told him you wanted material to make a suit, and he had a selection of cloth, and you picked your cloth, and he wrapped it up for you, and he took it up to Richie Purcell, and Richie Purcell measured you and made your suit. And that's how it worked, So there was no such thing running over to Simply Suits or to any place to buy a suit. It was local. But remember, these people had their own vegetables for the most part. They had their own meat, their own milk. So they weren't buying, there was a lot of things they weren't buying that people buy now.
They were very self-sufficient in a way.
They were baking their own bread. You would buy a bag of flour in the village, yeah, but you'd bake your own bread. And yeah, I suppose the thing is, nobody had means of transport to travel out to Kilmare or Killarney shopping.
Yeah.
So all the shopping was done locally. And it was a different village. It was a better village. Better village in that there were no derelict houses. I mean, the village is now derelict.
Yeah.
There were no derelict houses. Every house was lived in, and there was a family in every house. And it was good.
And the village used to be so lively, and now a lot of the houses you would consider them derelict. Just in between generations then, what would you say are the key changes in between, say, your generation and our generation then?
Education was something you had to earn when I grew up. Now it's an entitlement. And I think, and I don't want to brand today's youngsters as being entitled or anything like that, because that's not true. But younger people today get a lot and take it for granted that wasn't available to us as youngsters. I mean, I suppose I was in my 20s before I made any attempt at third level education. And then I did it part-time. So I held down a job and studied for my degree at the same time. Nowadays, children go off to college and they have nothing else to do, and they're whinged that they're overworked, you know?
Yeah.
I did a BSc in information technology, which was a total waste of time. But I did that on a full-time basis while holding down a full-time job, working 6, 7 days, 8 days a week, if you know what I mean. Because by that I mean it could be 60, 70 hours a week, like. And still studied as well, you know. I don't think there's any of the younger generation that would be prepared to do that, and I admire them for that, you know. But I think we were a little bit more pragmatic. We did what we had to do. No sense of entitlement. If you wanted something, you had to earn it.
Yeah.
I think education is, and how we educate ourselves is probably one of the big changes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Work. I mean, once you were able to walk, you were expected to work. When I was a child, really you were. You were employable at, as I said, I was employable at 11 years of age, and it wasn't child work I was doing. So I think that's it. Otherwise, young people today are very much the same as young people in my time. We played our football, we gave it our very best shot. We played our hurling, we gave it our very best shot, as people do today. There's no point in saying children today are different. The world we grew up in is different to the world people are growing up in today.
So I heard someone saying here the other day, the generation of grafters are gone. That was the.
I'd be inclined to agree with that. Yeah, I would. I mean, I can't imagine anybody today, any young fella today of 14, 15 years of age, with a telegraph pole on his shoulder and a pick and shovel going across the field to dig a hole and stand a pole. I can't see that happening.
Yeah.
But I mean, Danny Harrington will tell you that's what we did. Yep. We didn't do it all the time. Most of the work was done along the road, and there was always a digger there and that kind of thing. But we quite a lot of work to do. I can't imagine any child today at 13 or 14 shearing 100, 150 sheep. Can't see it happening. So yeah, the generation of grafters are gone. That's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
Most people my age, and especially the ones that went before me, were crippled by the time they were in their 60s, you know. Knees giving out, backs giving out. The amount of people my age you see around with bad backs is huge, from pure hard work. Abusing the body, yeah. So, yeah, the grafters are gone, there's no doubt about it. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing at all.
I'd say a lot of the reason the grafters are gone as well is, I'd say your generation, just the one under you, a lot of them raise their children with the mindset of stay in school, work hard, go third level education, get an office job, sit in your arse typing a computer all day, that kind of a thing. Because I know, for example, when I didn't go to school when I was younger, my mom would have said to me, kind of, you have to go to school because you don't want to end up like us. Like, you don't want to be a workhorse. You don't want to be just 60 hours a week, flat out the whole time, and then you're fucked by the time you're 50. So I'd say that's a big reason, kind of, the generation of grafters ended there as well.
Well, they were encouraged by their parents, yeah, absolutely. You have to make something of your life, and you have to get out of you have to get up off the minimum wage, you know, and you have to get out of this back-breaking work. And yet, I mean, a lot of people, and I, like right through secondary school, I worked Saturdays, I worked long weekends, bank holidays, worked Christmas holidays, Easter holidays, summer holidays. worked all those times and every Saturday with John Harrington. And expected to study as well.
Yeah.
Go up one if you
Oh
don't
yeah,
mind.
work away.
You mentioned education quite a lot. There's one thing that I think was taught. Well, how do I put this? More people were able to do it back then than they are now, and that's speak Irish. You yourself speak fluent Irish, I believe. So, what's the really importance of that? And
Well, for me, it's my identity, it's my culture, it's where I come from. I had grandparents who had very poor English, and Irish was their first language. My father, you rarely heard him speak Irish, but when he did, he had beautiful Irish, fluent Irish. But that was discouraged because English was the language of progression. So both my parents had good Irish. My father would have come from the Ivleary Gaeltacht, the West Cork Gaeltacht of Ballingeary, Cooley, Ballyvourney, that area. And my mother came from the back Gaeltacht up in Shees. And they both had good Irish, yeah. So I grew up, I suppose, even speaking English with a spattering of Irish thrown in there. I spent some time in boarding school in East Cork, which was an all-Irish school, and I learned to speak beautiful Irish there because that was the teachers we had. One of them was from Cooley in Barkelly, a cousin of mine, and they just had lovely Irish, so that rubbed off on me. And the love for the language rubbed off on me, but I see it's our culture, our identity, and I would hate to think that we will lose it, you know. And there's no reason why we should lose it, because the only reason I believe that people can't speak Irish is because they don't want to learn it.
Yeah.
Anybody can learn Irish, anybody can speak Irish. The only reason it's not there is that people don't want to do it.
Yeah.
there's been a kind of a lot of, I feel like our generation now
Massive resurgence, yeah.
there's been like a resurgence about it. Like ourselves, we're trying to learn the odd bit of Irish off like Duolingo and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's important. Like we should keep it. And I feel like there was how do you feel about the kind of resurgence of the young folk wanting to learn Irish again? And
I want to see that happen. I really want to see that happen. Yeah. I want our language to thrive and to become live, you know. And I suppose I love to see the purity of it being preserved, but I also love the kind of Irish you hear spoken casually, you know, where there's an odd old English word thrown in where it suits, and but you know,
usually a curse word.
even in Kilgarvan, when I was growing up, people speaking English, you know, it was fairly well punctuated with Irish words as well, you know. A young fellow was a garçon, and we learned to speak English with a strong Irish influence. But look, I mean, I love to see Irish being spoken poorly or spoken well, spoken formally or spoken very casually. It doesn't matter so long as it survives.
Is there any words you would like to say in Irish for the viewers, or even just for us?
Yeah.
Well, you mean the kind of words we use when speaking English? Is that what you're talking about?
No,
or?
just kind of like kind of a statement, like a words of wisdom kind of thing in Irish.
Well, I suppose that there are quite a lot, and you might be talking about the Shanockle there, but I suppose there were some beautiful little wisdoms are known as Shanockle, things like Ní Nartico Curle Kela, you know, there's no strength until people are pulling together. Iska Kela Waramid, it's in each other's shadows that we live, you know, and that is all, I suppose, in keeping with the kind of environment I grew up here in the village, where we did live in each other's shadows, you know, and it was lovely. It really was.
I've heard, back to that, there was kind of a thing where it was like, for instance, I've heard many a story of people, you know, my nan Noni.
Yep.
She'd see someone across the field. Yo, get in here! Come on in! You're coming in here, and she'd pour him a drink and everything, and it was just like a much friendlier time, it seems.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, people just, you didn't even knock at the door, you know, you just walked in. And if people were having their tea, you just sat down at the table and had it with them. I, in all my time growing up, right into the turn of the century and after, the key was never out of our front door. We never locked, the door was never locked. Here in the village, never locked. And there's an instance back in Killowen cottages, you know, that row of houses on the left before you get to St. John's Church in Killowen. I don't know how many houses there, it could be up to 20, 30 houses there. But all those houses had the same, one key would open all the doors. There is no magic to psychotherapy. You know, it's not an art or a skill where people can read other people's, where a psychotherapist can read a client's mind or anything like that. Yeah, we do get quite skilled, I suppose, at reading what's not being said.
Yeah.
We do get quite skilled at that. But really, all there is to psychotherapy is relationship. You know? And what works in psychotherapy is the relationship between therapist and client. And if that relationship isn't a good one, the therapy will not work. So if the therapist doesn't like the client, or if the client doesn't like the therapist,
It's just not going to work at all.
it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And the only thing that works in psychotherapy, yes, there are disciplines, and of course there is science in it, but without the client-therapist relationship, nothing will work.
Yeah.
And I suppose that to me is all there needs to be said about psychotherapy. It is a very, very, I suppose it's a wonderful discipline. It grew out of, like all the sciences, grew out of philosophy. And I do think, and I lament, the fact that Latin and Greek are no longer taught in schools.
Mr. Power was actually saying the same thing when we interviewed him.
Yeah, I really think we're all the poorer for it. I really would love to see philosophy becoming a school subject. I love the study of philosophy, and I have a degree in philosophy and a few postgrads in philosophy, and I just love it, and I can see the benefit in it, but I would love to see philosophy being taught, and it was out of philosophy all the sciences grew. But anyway, we're talking about psychotherapy, and I suppose one other thing I would like to say about psychotherapy is that every one of us should really be sitting down with a therapist just for our own personal growth and our own ability to understand ourselves. We should be 5 or 6 times during our lifetime, we should be doing at least 6 to 10 sessions with a psychotherapist for no reason other than to understand ourselves and understand, why do I do this? Why do I get scared when I see a yellow car coming down the street, you know?
Yeah.
There's an awful lot about ourselves, an awful lot that happens in our subconscious that we would do very, very well if we could get to understand it better. And psychotherapy can help with that.
I agree with that 100% because, after COVID, I would have done a small stint of therapy myself just because everything that happened on COVID just affected me in a different way I wasn't expecting. And I found it was massively helpful to just sit down for an hour and talk to someone, and I think she was a phenomenal therapist because she was great at not so much walking me to my own problem, but asking me a question, letting me explain myself, and then kind of walking me towards my own answer rather than telling me you should do this, which I thought was massive.
Psychotherapy is non-directive.
Yeah.
In other words, it's not the therapist's job to direct you. It's the therapist's job to give you space, and a very safe space, to tease out what it is you need to tease out, and to speak about what it is you need to speak about, knowing that you're in a setting where there's confidentiality, where there's mutual respect, where you can see through the person you're talking to. In other words, you're getting what you see, and that person thinks well of you. We call it unconditional positive regard. So if I have a client sitting in front of me and I don't have unconditional positive regard for them, then I'm not doing my job, and I really should finish that relationship, that therapeutic relationship.
Yeah.
Yep, it's what you say and what you explain there is exactly how psychotherapy should work.
Yeah, I just think it's an amazing practice. I think the way that, especially a lot of young people now, we're definitely a much softer generation than yours. Like, you know, we'd be more squishy mentally. You could probably argue physically as well. But just having the space to talk to someone, because a lot of people, even when they're talking to their friends and stuff like that, they'd have a guard up and they'd never actually say what they're truly thinking and all that stuff. So I found, for me anyway, it was great to go to a place and just be in completely and utterly honest about everything, and then, you know, have someone help me work through it. I just thought it was all amazing.
And did you find that you really liked that person you were sitting with?
Yeah. Yeah, because you feel like you build a relationship with them then, and it almost gets like you're excited to see them then.
You have to have that.
Yeah.
You really have to have that. And if you haven't got that, you don't have psychotherapy. You don't have therapy. But what is important is, as I mentioned, that unconditional positive regard has to be there. The therapist must be congruent in that, genuine. In other words, that every word they speak, that you can see that they mean it, that it's genuine. If you see anything false in your psychotherapist, the therapy is not working.
Yeah, then you don't want to go then, like.
Yeah. But there is no magic in psychotherapy. It's about the relationship between client and therapist. That's 80% of it. The science of it comes after.
Nice. These are the last two questions we kind of ask these to everyone just to kind of get a perspective and then all that. But is there any aspect of Ireland from when you were younger that you would like to preserve for the younger generation?
Yes, and I think it's lost. I would, and I suppose what I loved about the Ireland I grew up in was that, and look, I mean, it wasn't all beautiful interfamilial relationship at all. There was certainly plenty of bitterness and, I suppose, aggression as well. But the Ireland I grew up in, where people looked out for each other, you know, and I mean really looked out for each other, I'm afraid that's gone. I don't know the people living in the village now, never mind the people living in the outer part of the parish. As a child, when I was growing up, we knew everybody. And I could ramble into any house as a child in the parish, whether it would be up Mangerton or up Lamanach or up in Shees. I could walk into the front door of any house, and they would know me, and they would take care of me.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that people loved each other with a genuine, not a foolish love, but with a very genuine love. They loved each other, and they looked out for each other, and they looked after each other. And yes, of course, there were differences with people about boundaries and farm and stuff like that, but for the most part, people were closer to each other than an awful lot in there now. There's a lot of indifference today.
So, kind of a lack of community is what you're saying.
A lack of cohesion, yeah, a lack of community, a lack of relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see that come back. I would love that atmosphere where people would visit each other by night, and then I could move in. There might be a cup of tea and whatever there might be, but it could move into storytelling, it could move into gossiping, it could move into sing-song, a bit of music or something like that. But that tradition, they call it scoríocht thing. Scoríocht or like Buhan thing, where people just went to a Buhan is a house, like, you know, where people just went to each other's houses and they entertained each other. Didn't have television.
Yeah.
Probably had radio, but radio closed down at 10 o'clock by night. They entertained each other, and they really did love each other and look out for each other. That sense of belonging is gone. I'd love to see that. And I don't know if it can be restored, but that is, I think, the one aspect of the world I knew, our small world inside the perimeters of Kilgarvan Parish. That is one aspect of that world that I would love to see back again.
And then the last question now, just finishing up. Is there any words of wisdom that you would like to give to the younger generation coming up? It's a bit of a loaded question, yeah.
Yeah, if I were to put into one sentence, it would be, don't take yourself so seriously.
Yeah, that's definitely a big thing.
Yeah, I suppose we didn't really have too much of a vision growing up, and we certainly didn't take ourselves seriously. And I don't want to go any further into that because it would take a lot more than the time we have to explain what I have in mind. But a word of wisdom, yeah, don't take yourself too seriously. Have fun.
Have fun, yeah. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jerry, I'd just like to say thank you very much for joining us again.
It was a pleasure. It really was. Yeah. And I want to say thank you. I mean, I sat here and I watched your discipline. You asked the questions, you didn't interrupt, you listened, and you listened very attentively, and you recalled. And I want to say congratulations. That's skill.
Thank you very much.
That's skill.
Thank
and
you.
You did it very well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, guys, hope you enjoyed that there now. I had a lovely time talking to Jerry anyway. I thought he was incredible to talk to. Obviously, Tom had a couple of questions to ask as well. Let us know how you felt about it. Obviously, you can find our other social medias. We have an Instagram, X, TikTok, we have a Patreon as well, Facebook. We don't have an OnlyFans.
Also, we are willing, if you want to be on the channel, to get an Untold Ireland tattoo.
That's not true. Just if you want to get on and you want to do an interview, let us know. Get in contact with us. We'd only be delighted to have you. Before he says something we can't put on the internet now, thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next Friday.